Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. We have many interesting news for today. Let's start from the Kerch Bridge. According to Guardian, the Kerch Bridge is doomed in the first half of the year. This is their article, and here they rely to their source in HUR intelligence, in military intelligence of Ukraine, where Davydov is a main director, or you may call him a chief. HUR thinks that it can disable the bridge soon. Will do it in the first half of the 2024. One of the officials told The Guardian, adding that Kirill Budanov, the head of the main directorate of intelligence, already had most of the means to carry out this goal. He was following the plan approved by Vladimir Zelensky to minimize Russia's naval presence in the Black Sea, so the second stage is obviously to cut a Kerch Bridge supply. All of the Russian Navy ships which could have used to protect that bridge are now gone from the area. While the Kerch Bridge itself has two of the lines, one is a railway part and the other one is automobile road. The automobile part was already targeted at least two of the times. Russia closed this bridge for reconstruction, but finally it was capable to restore the connection and open it in quite short term. For several months the bridge was closed, but it didn't disturb really the supplies for the Russian army because they used mostly the railway connection. After the first strike it was disabled, but the second strike didn't cause any damage to that part of the bridge. The construction of the bridge is very robust. The pillars are very strong. They go deep down into the water, so Ukraine really needs something extraordinary to kaboom this bridge with dramatic circumstances for the Russian supplies. Could the drone boats do the harm to this bridge? Yes, potentially they can, but Russia installed some of the defense lines just in front of the bridge, some floating devices, reducing the chances for the drones to reach this critical infrastructure. But what about the Storm Shadow and Scalp missiles? Well, Kerch Bridge is out of the range of those. Towers is the other option, but Germany still hesitates to provide those to Ukraine. And all of those cruise missiles were not really made to disable those kind of the robust connections. One more option is the ATACMS long-range missile with a standard warhead. It could definitely disable it, but again the United States of America say that for now they're not sending those missiles to Ukraine. However, I do not exclude that somehow those missiles would rapidly appear in Ukrainian army, because ATACMS were supplied to Ukraine already, so what's the difference? No one would see it until the actual attack comes. But the most interesting option, which I think will be used for this one, actually we saw yesterday. Many of the articles came out that Ukraine packed a Cessna-style plane with explosives. So far, it's one of the most cheapest ways to deliver those to the Russian facilities, and for the Kerch Bridge, why not? Yeah, it shouldn't be just a single plane like that, but many of them, at least 10 of them, should be used at the same time with a combination of the drone boats. Yes, Russia will put their air defense, but if those planes fly very low over the ground or the water surface, Russia would not be able to identify those until the actual strike happens. But still, the Ukrainian intelligence says that it has almost everything to conduct this strike. It means that they are waiting for more tools, but something that might help to eliminate the supply connection for the Russian Federation to Crimea. I would say that for Ukraine it's critical to kaboom the structure this year, because Russia is building the alternate for the supplies of their group in Crimea and also on the south. Russia understands that this construction, the Kerch Bridge, is just a temporary solution for them. It still remains as the main target of Ukrainian military. Russia now builds a railroad which will connect Rostov-on-Don, so the Russian territory, with occupied territory of Mariupol, Melitopol, and it will go to Crimea, to Jankoy. So in this case, they would not really need a Kerch Bridge. They're gonna fully launch this road in 2025. They work really hard 24/7 to build this as soon as possible. It means that Ukraine should eliminate the supply connection for the Russian army this year, otherwise it would be too late. I already told you about the possible landing operation of the Ukrainian forces in Crimea. Still, that possibility exists, so Ukraine may perform the landing operation with limited forces, liberating a couple of the towns near to the coast. But this operation is not possible if the Kerch Bridge supply stays like it does right now. So if Ukraine eliminates this supply line for the Russian army, the next step will be the landing operation. Also, the supplement of the Russian group on the south in Kherson Oblast, Zaporizhia and partially Donetsk would be very hard for the Russian occupiers. Until at least 2025, the year they are planning to launch their railroad connection with Crimea. But even in this case, there are some vulnerable connections with Crimea. For example, over here there is the bridge, and on this side you may also find not the bridges, but very narrow parts where it's critical. Crossroads settlements which could be targeted by Storm Shadow in this case. Guys, just a short message here. Many thanks for my Patreon supporters and the sponsors of my YouTube channel. Guys, you are awesome. Thank you for your kind support, because YouTube monetization is not really that reliable for my channel, so you make me go forward and upload videos daily. Again, thank you so much for it. So guys, the rest of you, if you want to support my job, you might find some of the links in the video description just below. Obviously, if you can and want to do it. I'm not begging to support me, no. But it's now my full-time job in which I rely on my supporters and viewers. You may see that we have almost no integrations on this channel any longer. It is also possible because of your support. Again, kind of the worrying and the strange article from Politica. Guys, I told you before that all of those mass media are not really reliable in general. Yeah, sometimes they share the information with proofs, but here's just philosophy with, I would say, some of the truth in it. Let's go through this article. So, Ukraine is at great risk of its front lines collapsing. Well, may Russia penetrate the Ukrainian defense lines, for example, near Avdiivka? For this day, no. In perspective, well, we'll see. Everything depends on resources, but with the current Russian army resources, I don't think that it's possible in a close-term or middle-term perspective. But Politica says that everything depends on Russia and the direction where they are going to concentrate their main force during the summer counteroffensive, or offensive, it's better to say, for the Russian army. Because they have more of the army men, more resources, aviation gliding bombs and other weaponry, there is a great risk of Ukrainian defense to collapse at one spot or in two of those. I review the front lines updates almost every day. I wouldn't say that there is no such a risk, but the probability of it is kind of low this summer, even if Ukraine doesn't have the enough support. Politica relies on some of the anonymous source from Ukrainian officer command. So those officers say that there is nothing that can help Ukraine to conquer the Russian army because there is no serious technologies able to compensate Ukraine for the large mass of troops Russia is likely to hurl at us. We do not have those technologies, and the West doesn't have them as well in sufficient numbers. One of the top-ranking military sources told Politica. Again, what kind of the source, they are unable to show it openly. But part of it is actually truth, and they also say about it in their article, because General Commander Zaluzhny, the ex-General Commander, used to say that it is the war of chance. So then Ukraine starts to use some of the unique weaponry like Storm Shadow or HIMARS. This option is very effective, but for a limited period of time. After it, Russia learns how to conquer this threat from the new weaponry. For example, as I say to you, they put the floating barricades to eliminate the risk from the drone boats in a Kerch Brigre location. The same, I'm sure, will go with F-16s. They will be very effective at the beginning, but later on Russia might find a way how to conquer them in the skies. That's why Ukraine needs to obtain lots of the fighter jets, but our allies will send just a few of them at first. And in this article they also say about F-16s that those could be very effective back in 2023 during the counteroffensive operation of Ukraine. Now they will be used just to eliminate the threat from the Russian gliding bombs, that's it. No one is speaking about the air superiority for Ukrainian Air Force, even with F-16s. Meanwhile, Russia has mostly its informational war that they will try to strike Kharkiv this year, but I don't think that it is real, at least for now. They need to announce new mobilization and basically increase their military resources for that try. As usual, then you see this information coming from the Western media sources. I would say that yes, Russia is preparing for that strike. And yes, there is the chance that they might do it. Now Ukraine needs around 4 million artillery shells to conquer the Russian assaults in every point of the front lines, plus around 2 million FPV and other types of the drones. But this year Ukraine will probably obtain 1.5 million artillery shells plus 1 million drones, which is not enough to keep the front lines everywhere, but also at the same time it guarantees that Russia will not break the front lines and penetrate Ukrainian defense deeply into Ukrainian controlled territory. So my own incompetent opinion about this great risk of the front lines collapsing, that this risk is not that great as Politica tries to tell us in this article. And with the military support from the United States of America, I think that that risk wouldn't even exist. I have no doubts that finally Ukraine will be supported with this new military bill. Also, Anthony Blinken in his interview to the French media said that there is no risk that Russia would occupy Kiev, for example. They'll be not able to do it because Ukraine is supported by allies. The NATO organization is working to provide a long-term military bill for Ukraine. They call it Trump-proof fund for Ukraine, which might accumulate $100 billion for the next 5 years. From the name of the plan, we understand that Trump has potential to block all of the support for Ukraine if he becomes a next Ukrainian United States president. Well, here we see a great positive signal from NATO. Before this military alliance didn't want to support Ukraine, they wanted to stay aside, saying that they didn't want to be involved into this war because of the potential conflict with Russia. But now the stakes are so high that even NATO tries to help Ukraine with a new initiative. Jens Stoltenberg says that the fight for Ukraine is getting harder and harder. That's why NATO should develop its own plan to support Ukrainian army. Oh my god, no, Hungary will not participate in NATO activities to coordinate military supplies to Ukraine, so they're not in this deal. What a surprise! Yeah, really, Hungary is so funny. They think that they decide something out there. Alright, we have some news about the attack on the Russian Crocus Hill, which happened more than a week ago. So now, according to the Washington Post, they rely on their sources in United States intelligence. Russia actually had the warning that the attack might happen exactly at this place near to Moscow, exactly in Crocus City Hall. But miraculously, Russia listened and didn't do anything to prevent it from happening. Moreover, they did everything for it to be successful, letting attackers to do their job. Just to remind you, the Russian police arrived to the scene more than an hour later after the attack started. Plus, for more than 5 hours, attackers were allowed to leave the place and move somewhere near to the border with Belarus. Absolutely insane, and here we have two versions. First one, Russia is responsible for it directly or via their own connections with ISIS organization. The second variant, that they're not involved in organizing this attack, but they didn't do anything for it not to happen. Later on, as we see now, to blame Ukraine and to consolidate the Russian society, probably for the future mobilization. Recently, Putin had a couple of meetings with his FSB and the Russian police forces. And from what I'm able to understand, that it will be the endless war for Russia, for Putin personally. I mean, he's not willing to stop it in any kind of the scenario. His goal is clear, he says about it openly. Russia lives in a new reality in which there will be always a war with Ukraine or with someone else who is supported by West. Yes, he again told about the global West, who is the main enemy of Russia. According to Putin, everything is done to eliminate Russia. Yeah, you may say, Dennis, we shouldn't listen to this nonsense, but actually we should. At least to understand the next Russian steps, because everything in Russia depends on will, well, not only of Putin, but of his KGB circle. I'm saying KGB because Putin and his circle were working in this structure of the Soviet Union. So the next time you think about the possible peace agreements with Russia, just listen to any sort of Putin's speech that he says about Ukraine or the West in general. The idea for Russia is to expand, taking more territories as it was well before, and also lower the influence of United States and Europe. The end of war now for Putin is the end of his power in Russia. So he will continue to attack again and again Ukraine and if he is successful in Ukraine, somehow he'll attack the other countries too, the ex-Soviet countries, I mean. We actually do not need to be Putin's friends to understand that. Just listen to him and what he says actually happens, at least from the Russian side. Again and again he says that the goals of the special military operations will be achieved. He has absolutely no doubts about it, so that is why it's going to be the endless war until Putin and his circle are in power. Strangely and sadly, the Western countries still do not understand that feature. And the main politicians of the United States and Germany, for example, are looking for some sort of the negotiations or compromise about Ukraine, but it's not possible. Politics in the Baltic countries, in Finland and in France understood that. That's why, for instance, President Macron has changed his position towards Russia dramatically. The last month there was a virtual meeting between President Macron, President Joe Biden and Chancellor Scholz, where Macron said that it's time to change our position to create the political uncertainty for Russia, to hide the next step from allies towards Russia. President Macron insisted for the same behavior as he performs right now from the United States and Germany. But those countries disagree with this policy and openly say that they will not support deploying their forces in Ukraine. Well, as I say to you, we don't really need the NATO forces or American forces to be located in Ukraine. No, we just need vehicles and weaponry. But Russia should understand that there are no red lines for them. So United States and Germany now have their own policy, and Russia sees that those countries will not go full in to defend Ukraine. But miraculously, France insisted and still behaved as it doesn't have any kind of the red lines. This behavior is very disturbing for Putin, and all of the Russian propaganda now works against France. A speaker of the Russian Foreign Ministry, alcoholic Zakharova, said today that France is going to deploy 1,500 soldiers to Ukraine from its Foreign Legion forces. Well, guys, they're damn scared about this move from France. And President Zelensky says that Russia plans to mobilize another 300,000 soldiers in a couple of months. Well, they heard this information even before, but with the current Russian elite attitude towards this war, the mobilization in Russia is just imminent. Not just a single wave, but it will be announced many times in the future. Again, the Russian regime just can't live without the war. Just now, while I'm recording this video, there are some of the breaking news start to appear in the internet. From the Vox source, I wonder what's the source, is it reliable or not, but it says that in the next 48 hours, Israel might be under the Iranian attack. The CIA informs Israel about the case. They say that it will be a drone and rocket massive attack, but for me it's really hard to say whether this source is reliable. However, I read the article from BBC today that Iran is really going to reply on the strike of Israel on their military command in Damascus. So they will do it, but not sure about the next 48 hours. This map was also shared in internet. It shows the jammed GPS signal, but from my own experience as the airline pilot, this signal is always shady over here. Then you approach Israel flying from Ukraine via Cyprus. It was even before the full-scale war in Ukraine. Who jams it? I think Russia, because they have their own military bases over here, so they do this stuff. It is a known problem. It is not connected with a possible future Iranian attack or strike on Israel. Some of the good news, this picture was taken in one of the airplanes, probably it is Ruslan Antonov 124, which delivers, as you can see, Leopard 2 tanks to Ukrainian army. This is the flight from Lisbon, Portugal, so probably those are the Portuguese tanks. We know that Ukrainian air defense targeted a bunch of the Russian fighter jets and fighter bombers like Sukhoi Su-34, but how many of those are left in the Russian Air Force? Well, around 100 units of Sukhoi Su-34, 100 units of Sukhoi Su-35, the most capable Russian fighter jet. Also around 7 of the units of A-50U, but I think just a couple of them are still able to perform the missions. The rest are grounded. For the spare parts, they are not airworthy. As you can see, still quite a lot of the airplanes to go, but also Russia has a huge number of Sukhoi 27 Soviet-made fighter jets, together with MiG-29s. They outnumber Ukrainian Air Force by several times. Alright, let's go to the military map update. Berdichi village, there Russia propelled today, but not a lot. So it was yesterday and it is today. They occupied almost all of the village, but it's not what was presented yesterday by the Institute for the Study of War, where they say that Russia advanced in this whole area crossing the river. No, it's not like that. Russians are still struggling in taking the village under control. What we have here is the fire detection feature. It shows that there are some of the spots where the fights are continued. All of this is Berdichi. It's way early to say that Russia is able to penetrate this river. But Russia continued their advancement in Ivanovsk, at the same time losing their vehicles. Yesterday they occupied this part and today they moved ahead, taking this street under control, but that attack was stopped by Ukrainian resistance. Other than that, for today there were just minor updates, so yet we are not speaking about the major Russian offensive which they start to advertise for the summer campaign. You probably know that Belgorod city, it's not far away from the Ukrainian border, and it is one of the most bombed city of the Russian Federation nowadays. Nevertheless, Russian officials recognize the city as a top 5 cities to live in Russia. I wonder what's about the other Russian cities. Is it really more comfortable to live under the bomb strikes than, for example, in Yakutia? Yeah, probably there you can freeze to death. So indeed they say that this city has one of the best infrastructures. Should the other cities of Russia take the example from Belgorod? Shouldn't they? Here we see a very interesting drone image. The built Ukrainian defense lines in Zaporizhia Oblast. Dragon T's and the trenches also against the tank movement. Here we are getting closer to the point that Ukraine should defend its territories with a similar looking defense lines as Russia constructed on the southern part. My friends, about some of the combat videos, you may find them on my Telegram channel. I'll share the link in the video description just below. And now, my friends, please don't forget to press your huge like to this video. By doing so, you help me a lot. As usual, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.